It's not just Grand Theft Auto Trilogy Definitive Edition that's facing backlash because of its disastrous launch. Battlefield 2042, unfortunately, did not launch in an adequate state that meets certain quality standards where it feels like it's polished, and the community is not happy, understandably, as this is yet another very rough Battlefield launch. Well, remember what happened with Battlefield 5. A lot of people seem to believe that Battlefield 2042 somehow managed to do it even worse with how rough this game is. Looking at Metacritic right now, you can see that the user score is at a mere 2.6, which is better than Grand Theft Auto Trilogy's 0.5, but a 2.6 is still nothing to boast about. And looking at some of the stuff that people are saying, the top negative review here reads, this has nothing to do with Battlefield. No scoreboards, no classes, no destruction, no servers, no stats, no chat. The weapons, oh my god, they literally only have 4 ARs. What the fuck is this? It tries to be a mix of Warzone, Fortnite, Rainbow Six Siege, Apex, and so on. The cringe after game lines. This is an unfinished, unpolished, broken game. Do not buy this until everything is fixed. If you wanted just the most basic of summaries, this kind of breaks it down pretty well in terms of the sentiments I've seen across the community. And beyond user reviews, we're starting to see articles with headlines like Battlefield 2042's opening weekend has been a disaster crop up, mentioning issues like hard crashes, server problems, and whole nights where the whole thing is simply unplayable. And it's up there with Battlefield 4's infamously sorry start. From my own experience on Xbox Series X, it's considerably worse. More issues are pointed out down here. More than half of the matches have ended in server issues that have me rubber banding across the map, removing my avatar's head from its body, and rendering the whole thing entirely unplayable. The Xbox version is bearing the brunt of the problems. That's the platform Battlefield 2042's leading on. I'm still not sure about the replacement of the old class system with a hero-esque specialist, bringing up essentially the loss of identity of Battlefield in favor of trends that have become more popular, but maybe doesn't really align with the identity of Battlefield. IGN also released its own article titled Battlefield 2042's early launch has had some teething problems, server issues, unexpected gunplay quirks, glitches, and UI design. In terms of the topic of server problems, they mentioned that the game is unplayable because of an error when loading into servers when these server problems kick in, and many players reported requesting refunds within that time. Gunshot bloom, the inconsistent way that guns kind of recoil and spread the bullets, a term for how shots will deviate from your exact crosshair aim, often used as a way to promote precision burst of fire rather than constant trigger holding. The level to which shots deviate in 2042 has caused a huge amount of discussion. The amount of bloom now turns landing shots into as much a matter of luck as skill. Now, IGN did embed a couple of videos here from Reddit. We'll get to these in a bit, but you'll see just how bad it is once you check out some of the footage people have been posting. Next up on the category of glitches, hovercrafts can essentially climb buildings and fly. I'll show you footage of this as well. Many people on Reddit have been posting about this. Players getting down and becoming unable to be revived, but also unable to die and respawn. I also got footage for that. Clipping through scenery into out-of-bounds areas on the map, being stuck in a crouched state or unable to switch weapon, and even being able to shoot yourself from a vehicle while your character model is still climbing into the vehicle. This is no joke. That is a thing that people have shown happen. Another major point of contention is Battlefield 2042's awful UI, which has been criticized for overblown complexity, with gun customization receiving the brunt of criticism, lack of information compared to previous games, from the game not indicating how many players are being waited for before a match begins, to making it a more fiddly experience to choose a spawn point, among other things that I'll bring up once we get into Reddit. Opaque HUD elements that can inadvertently cover up parts of the screen in tense situations, while large pop-in banners that indicate who has majority control of areas and matches have been criticized since the game's beta. And that's one thing to note. Many of the issues that this game is plagued by were present in the beta, and lo and behold, the development team didn't have enough time within the time frame of just a couple weeks to fix everything, and the beta turned out to be a pretty good indicator for how roughly this game would launch, as was the case with betas for games like Anthem, Marvel's Avengers, Fallout 76, you name it. We've been here before. This is just history repeating itself. Now, the developers have been putting out assurances like this one addressing server issues. We're aware that many of you are receiving an error message while attempting to load into a server and then being returned to the main menu. We're on it. For now, you can hit retry and attempt to join a server. And then another update got provided throughout the day. We have performed focused backend maintenance targeted at reducing the number of times you see error persistence data 2002G. These changes are active now and are being actively monitored. We're seeing significantly reduced errors and will keep on it, but significantly reduced doesn't mean resolved, and there's still people who have been experiencing server issues. Here's another article from News outlet Kotaku noting how on Xbox in particular, crashes have been commonplace with Battlefield 2042. Folks who doled out extra money to play Battlefield 2042 early, or rather to actually play it on time while everyone else gets to play it late, say the game won't stop crashing on Xbox Series X. I'm just playing a few minutes, sometimes an hour, and suddenly my whole Xbox shuts down. So it doesn't just crash the game, it's crashing the console in its entirety. Other Battlefield 2042 players describe the same problem. Some point out that the crashes have been a consistent issue since the game unlocked, while others mention they can only play for a few minutes before suffering another console crashing bug. Then we have design flaws that have paved the way to people exploiting features of the game. In particular, the Battlefield Portal feature that essentially enables you to make a custom game with all kinds of rule sets and really just kind of go crazy with it. Well, Battlefield 2042 players are joining XP farming servers only to discover that they're the crops. People are taking advantage of this feature to create custom games that are specifically designed to farm XP, and that's kind of what has been most prominent with this feature. So the original story here reads, Battlefield Portal is a tool for creating, hosting, and discovering custom game modes in Battlefield 2042, but a lot of the listed custom games turned out to be XP farming modes. Bot matches designed for grinding XP. Players are joining XP farming servers hoping to rack up attachment unlocks, but are instead discovering that they're the XP being farmed. XP farming servers are often set up with a small human team fighting a big team of bots who are cursed to spawn with a sliver of health each. In most XP farming servers, the bot team isn't even allowed to have guns. Now, many of these servers also allow additional players to join in, and if you join in after the smaller team who is armed to the teeth is full, then you'll be joining the bot team that is purposely disadvantaged to be easy pickings. Players can keep joining even after the small team intended for humans is full. That puts most players on the big bot team, weaponless fodder for the XP farmers. Which is why we've been seeing Reddit posts like this. Reality is often disappointing. Oh boy, I can't wait to see what game modes people are coming up with in Battlefield Portal. And then they look and it's just all basically XP farms, which actively ruin this mode essentially given how difficult it is to find a proper server that isn't just an XP farm. Now, as I previously mentioned, Battlefield has since temporarily disabled XP awards on custom Battlefield Portal servers. The game is also being admonished for lacking certain basic features like voice chat is not available at launch. There's also the fact that players are demanding a traditional scoreboard, as that didn't make it into the game, kill-death ratios and all that. There are players who've been apparently unhappy with the number of weapons featured in Battlefield 2042, and there's generally complaints about a feeling that there's content that's lacking compared to previous Battlefield releases. Alright, so that finally brings us into some of the posts you can see on the official Battlefield 2042 subreddit, where the game is being memed on and crapped on, and even on the official Battlefield subreddit, not Battlefield 2042 subreddit, but the Battlefield subreddit, you'll find posts like this. It's that time again, folks. Battlefield fans getting ready for another rocky launch, and yeah, the sensation of getting kicked in the nuts over and over again, but having to bear the brunt of the pains and frustrations that come with that. Back to the Battlefield 2042 subreddit, you'll find a post that reads, a suggestion for a better title, Battlefield 20 to 42 frames per second. And yeah, one of the major issues with this game has been performance, which was apparent in the beta and also in EA's own official trailers. Recall that I released that video about how the PC trailer that is supposed to show off RTX and DLSS, which is supposed to improve performance through AI upscaling. Even in that trailer, the game wasn't running at a smooth 60 frames per second. You could see severe stutters and frame rate drops. And lo and behold, that was an issue that made it into the final game, as I predicted, despite criticisms from some who kept touting this was a beta, you should give it a chance, when, again, we've been here before. Next up, another major point of contention has been the lack of destructible environment. Next level destruction, this is the future of gaming, says this Reddit user who posted the following video where, despite shooting buildings with tanks, the building is completely unaffected, which just wouldn't have been the case in previous Battlefield games, and destruction has been such a major aspect of Battlefield for a long time, and comparatively it just feels lackluster in this latest entry. And stuff that is destructible doesn't even behave realistically, with this guy right here shooting the monitor and the whole table blowing up. Yeah, I mean, that just looks ridiculous. I previously brought up user interface, and people are memeing on it by posting things like, fine, I'll do it myself, random Reddit users creating better UIs than a multi-billion-dollar studio. Indeed, we have been seeing members of the community come up with their own UI design that many people consider better than what the developers came up with. I made a redesign for the main menu, and this has a 96% approval rate. And here's somebody who is memeing aspects of UI that's missing, like a scoreboard. Hey guys, after seeing all the cool UI changes people have been making, I thought I'd take a shot and make a feature that I think would be cool to have in the game. Your team, not your team, kill, assist, death, etc. Score. Basically, hey, where's the scoreboard? We kind of miss it in this first-person shooter competitive game. Here's somebody else noting graphical issues like the players turning into static 2D images at more than 50 meters away. And this is obviously just some Photoshop work, not an actual screenshot from the game. But this guy's referring to essentially the further assets are from you, the less detailed they become, and that helps performance. But when that's not handled properly, sometimes it's noticeable. In Cyberpunk, for example, you may have seen footage of people zooming in far away and only seeing static 2D images instead of full 3D models. And that's kind of what happens here when more than 50 meters away, apparently, according to this Reddit user, players start to look like that, static, almost like Paper Mario style models. And other people knowing that they've never seen this in any other Battlefield, at least not to this extent. I have to imagine that this is to handle any increased player load. And also keep in mind that performance is pretty bad with Battlefield 2042, so maybe this was part of the solution, but it just makes for a visually unappealing gameplay experience. Something else people are missing are animated first-person takedowns, whereas in Battlefield 2042 you get third-person takedowns instead, which makes it just less seamless of a gameplay experience. There are people criticizing aspects of the game's progression. This is just baffling. 240 kills to get the first muzzle break on the AC-42. Meanwhile, you need to unlock 4 suppressors that are identical in stats. That's just obviously a very piss-poor way to make players feel like they're being rewarded, and so people are responding with things like having to unlock 4 suppressors is literally baffling. And beyond missing elements like voice chat and missing HUD elements or UI elements like kill-death ratio scoreboard, people are also pointing out stuff like how there's no distance bonus points XP on sniper long-range headshots, or even a way to tell how far it actually was. People use sniping distance for bragging rights and to show off some badass sniping, and now that aspect has kind of been crippled. Important information like footsteps audio apparently is really off in this game. Anyone else having a problem with footsteps? Everyone sound the same, both teammates and enemies. It's always the same constant sound, like someone is running on some wooden floor, no matter the surface or the environment you're actually in. It's really hard to actually figure out the direction of the sound, and it happened more than once that you can't hear enemy that is right behind you. So just something about the directionality of footsteps and the sound and the texture of that sound just isn't aligning properly and making it impossible to use sound to inform your strategies and to gauge where your enemies might be located. There's other missing information like not having a way to tell how much damage you deal to vehicles, and this Reddit user calls this a major oversight, wondering why the hell was this left out. I have absolutely no gauge on how much damage it takes to actually kill vehicles. A big part of these competitive first-person shooters is gauging risk and reward, and if you cannot tell how damaged a vehicle is, then you don't know what the risks and rewards are in that scenario. There are issues with the minimap. Please, for the love of God, add a height to minimap so it does not show the spotted icon next to me on the ground level when someone is spotted 178 floors above me, so that's just very misleading. Next up, we have more complaints about the absence of a scoreboard at the end of each round, how this is crap, and people wondering why is competition such a horrible thing these days. And going from the Battlefield 2042 subreddit to the Battlefield subreddit, people are wondering the same thing and expressing that removing statistics like kill-death ratio and score is one of the most unnecessary changes you made, DICE. And beyond that, this user notes how you can't even see players' ranks, which is just ridiculous. A lot of people use kill-death ratio as a point of reference for just how well they're doing, whether they're progressing in their skill with this game. And now there's just, without that point of reference, there's just less of that drive to get better. We then have people highlighting some bizarre bugs and glitches, like how you can shoot yourself during vehicle enter animations. And this is something that I previously brought up briefly, told you there was actually footage of this, and here it is. This is what that looks like. The character enters the vehicle, and then somehow just dies for shooting. Obviously, this death was of no fault of the player. It was a bullshit death. And stuff like this will disincentivize people from coming back if they keep dying for reasons that make no sense. And speaking of death, some people have encountered an issue where they're essentially in purgatory, where they've been down but cannot die and are stuck there. Love the new purgatory system where you can't die but you can't live, or skip to respawn, or open menus, or quit the match, or do anything other than close the program. And here is the clip showing that. The player just stuck. You can see the counter is run down to 0, but nothing is happening. And the only solution is either for another player or an enemy player to find this guy and, finish him off, or to, exit the match and just find a new match. And given that these maps are sizable enough to accommodate 128 players, in a situation like this, it's very difficult to be discovered and to be finished off, so more often than not, you'll actually have to exit the game, exit the match. If this stuff happened every once in a while, it'd be one thing, but stuff like this happens frequently, and there's a wide variety of types of disruptive bugs that just completely cripple one's ability to have fun with this game. Here we have another video showing yet another bizarre bug. You'll see in a moment. Yeah. This also happened in Cyberpunk, now that I think about it. But this is essentially, the player for some reason getting dragged across the map and dying. Again, it's just one of those disruptions where, through no fault of the player, they're either killed or just crippled in some way that gives the enemy the advantage, though. Who knows what bugs the enemies are encountering as well. Here's somebody else pointing out how difficult it is to play with more than 4 friends. DICE have more than 4 friends that have played together for literally years, and we'd like to continue to do so. The fact that we cannot control squads or at least get on the same team as our friends is honestly so disappointing, especially for a game with this amount of people. And then this user expresses bafflement that such a core pillar of Battlefield was erased just like that. Here we have somebody pointing out graphical glitches like this, which is just straight out of Assassin's Creed. And then for more game crippling stuff, we have this stuff right here showing how OP the hovercraft is, with its ability to literally scale walls and just fly around like it's this multi-purpose vehicle. Obviously, this is not normal. Here's somebody else showing something similar, where there's a literal hovercraft climbing a wall in a way where it obviously wasn't intended to, which obviously disrupts the balance of the game. This finally brings us to a major issue that I previously referenced, that I said I'd show later, how bullet spread works in this game. First of all, certain weapon mods aren't working right, like the muzzle brake that's supposed to reduce recoil actually increases it. So right here we can see footage of the guy using the weapon with the muzzle brake on, and you can see how far up the spread goes, and then removing the muzzle brake leads into this, where the height of the spread is actually lower. And then putting it back on, you can see that the height is very similar to what's on the left here, actually higher than without. So the weapon mod's actually doing the opposite of what it's meant to do and making the bullet spread worse. And then we have clips showing just how bad the bullet spread is, to the point where shooting an enemy despite you having the iron sight trained right on them is more a matter of luck than skill. And you can see this for yourself. The crosshairs pointed right at them. And look at this. Every bullet is going way off the mark. You can see them actually flying left and right and all over. Basically a stormtrooper's aim. Here's somebody else wondering how this can be this bad, and showing another clip that highlights the issue here. This guy should be dead. But with the level of bullet spread here, that's basically just a crapshoot, a gamble. Yeah, this is what I call a surprise mechanic. Here's somebody else pointing out how garbage the bullet spread is, how random it is, to the point where it just makes it impossible for certain weapons to aim and be in any way, shape, or form viable. Yeah, this is terrible. And we're seeing plenty of complaints about this. Random bullet deviation is a joke. Imagine next generation weapon system for the military can't even shoot straight. My airsoft performs better than this piece of junk spread pattern dice. I know you're aware of this shit. Remove the bullet spread. Some people pointing out how they're trying to get through achievements like kills with M5A3 from a distance of 150 meters. And people wondering, how is this possible with how awful the bullet spread is in this game? This finally brings us to a number of posts from disgruntled players feeling like Battlefield 2042 is in many ways a regression from past Battlefield titles and how it's lost its identity and how it's rougher in many ways than past rough launches. It blows my mind there's 5 years and a generation of consoles between Battlefield 1 and Battlefield 2042. The atmosphere, sound design, depth and color and details, map design and map flow, movement system, melee animations, just to name a few, are light years ahead in Battlefield 1. Here's somebody else who said this game is a major step back for Battlefield. Gameplay and content were so much better in Battlefield 5, and Battlefield 5 didn't set a high bar either. That was a very roughly launched game, and the fact that people miss Battlefield 5 after playing 2042 tells you how rough 2042 is. We had grand operations, team deathmatch, conquest, domination, somewhat of a campaign. In 2042, we literally have 3 game modes that are actually 2042. The weapon bloom is terrible, the bullet spread. There are 2 to 3 barrel attachments for the M5 that literally do the exact same thing. I'm not even mad about the bugs. The gameplay and content just isn't there. Remove the ability to peek behind cover. Oh yeah, that's right. There's no more leaning and peeking through cover, which many people are baffled by. No more laying on your back while prone. I'm just out here naming things off the top of my head. 3 years in development, and this is what we get. Could have copied Battlefield 5 and slapped a 2042 setting on it and would have been better than this. Here's somebody else who expressed similar sentiments. The game is fun, but compared to Battlefield 1, 4, and 5, it feels like a major step back in many aspects. UI feels very cluttered, unintuitive, and downright confusing. Minimap is very bad and hard to make out in general. The chat, the lack of scoreboard, it's just a mess. Graphics are okay, but compared to Battlefield 1 and even Battlefield 5, it feels like a definite downgrade on all fronts. Lack of destruction is really baffling. Again, a series staple. There's hardly any destruction, which is one of the hallmarks of Battlefield games. Tanks are getting stuck on small things and cannot be broken. Like, really? Sound design is way worse than previous titles, and lack of oomph. Optimization is downright garbage and embarrassing, and this is a universal complaint, and it runs like shit on even high-end machines. Absolutely not ready for release. Overall, Battlefield 2042 feels like a downgrade from previous titles. And it's especially baffling given that EA actually took an off year for Battlefield 2042, and the hope was that this off year would grant developers enough time to ship a polished, feature-complete product, but unfortunately, that was not meant to be. Here's yet somebody else expressing similar sentiments. This is literally the most disappointing Battlefield experience ever, and this is basically echoing similar sentiments and how this kind of reminds them of the whole cyberpunk fiasco. Here we have somebody wondering how something like this could happen. A letter to developers. You gave us something that is so far from what the vision of Battlefield is. You took away class systems, a staple of the franchise. You took away scoring systems that rewarded people for things other than killing an enemy. You took away the scoreboard. You took away the ability to pick your squad. You took away server browser and filtering features. Your map design is overall awful, and the movement compared to past 2 titles is abysmal. For every step forward Battlefield 2042 takes, it seems to just take 2 steps back in other areas. So yeah, you get the idea. I've shown you plenty of posts and articles that really highlight how disastrous Battlefield 2042's launch has been, how rough of a state it's currently in, and how, unfortunately, in many ways, it regressed from previous entries, with some people even missing Battlefield 5 of all entries, one of the most infamous of Battlefield games. It really goes to highlight that 2042 absolutely should have been delayed. It was apparent from the beta. It was apparent from that PC trailer that showed just how roughly the game ran. I mean, when the game's running rough on official trailers, when developers can't get this game to run properly internally, I mean, the writing's on the wall at that point. But EA does what EA does and just get it out as soon as possible to meet the financial quotas and have good financial guidance and to rake in and only look at the short term. We'll see how much this game progresses in the coming months and years, but this is certainly not a game you should get at launch. You should wait a couple months at least. But if you look at Battlefield 5's post-launch development history, That wasn't handled well at all. Tons of roadmap content that they couldn't fulfill because they were so busy fixing the game. And even when they tried, they would often break more things than they'd fix. And, Battlefield 2042, given that past history, may very well suffer the same fate. It's all so uncertain with these kinds of disastrous AAA game releases. So yeah, that's the situation with Battlefield 2042, ladies and gentlemen. It's not faring much better than the launch of GTA, the Trilogy Definitive Edition. Let me know in the comments below what your experience has been like with this game if you got the early access and have been delving into it, and what your general take is on the state of Battlefield 2042 currently, and whether you think it can make some kind of recovery and comeback months or years down the line. I mean, who knows? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.